a lot of people have asked me about the drones and what insight I can provide to you. So let me just kind of break it down. In late 2024, started seeing drones over major United States cities. And I mean, there was a ton of misinformation. A lot of those drone sightings were actually, piloted aircraft, helicopters, small planes, military planes, that sort of thing. But we eventually began to learn that they definitely were large, you know, unmanned drones. And we're talking, when I say large, these things were the size of cars. And so you have drones all the way from your standard, consumer drone, all the way up to drones the size of a car flying over large U.S. cities. And it started on the East Coast, but eventually it was all over the United States. I think something like 210 cities, major cities, had these drones flying over. And the Biden administration was woefully inadequate in its response. In fact, President Biden left office without sufficiently addressing the drone activity. And people started getting really outraged and really scared. It started to create a little bit of a hysteria. Things in America tend to become hysteria once the media gets involved. And so eventually what happened was, people started taking action, trying to get the drones themselves, that sort of thing. The government had to intervene and pass legislations that, if you're not law enforcement, you cannot shoot down a drone type of. Well, I can't really say what happened on this platform because I need to be careful, but let me just say that eventually some entrepreneurial people in the South found a way to acquire one of these drones. We'll just put it that way. And a lot of people were expecting to find, markings from China or from Iran or that sort of thing, but the drones had no discernible information. But when we finally saw what one looked like, it was massive. It was bigger than a passenger vehicle. Well, when people actually saw these things and how massive they were, and they really understood what they might be capable of, and they had no answers, this made people even more furious. And what we eventually learned was that it was us. It was us the whole time. It was the United States military testing out drone equipment. Like, they were testing out new technology, but they had a specific. And it turns out that the United States military kept the Biden administration in the dark on purpose because it was to their benefit to have the administration appear incompetent. And this essentially was a PSYOP campaign by U.S. military and by government agencies. And the reason for this was twofold. Number one, it was definitely a test to understand how these drones could be deployed in a civilian capacity in a normal scenario or in a battlefield scenario. And number two, the most important, the single biggest security threat to the global military-industrial complex is actually these small consumer drones. We have spent 50 years building military equipment that's capable of this massive warfare, advanced technology, seek and destroy missiles, the Iron Dome, all that sort of thing. But a 14-year-old with a phone has the technology that is very hard to detect and find. And so the U.S. military and U.S., really the global militaries needed to really end consumer drone technology. It was a significant threat to safety. And while the Biden administration was kept in the dark, the new administration was very clearly explained how dangerous these small drones could be. And so along with a very cooperative Congress and a very cooperative court system, all consumer drones were banned. All drones were banned. Consumers were still allowed to have drones that were less than 250 grams, but if you owned any drone that was over 250 grams, you had to turn it in. It turns out that the hysteria was very successful, and while once promising, drone technology became illegal for consumers to own. Now, businesses can still use drones for legitimate business purposes, but it is heavily regulated, and there is advanced tracking technology on every single drone that has a registered purpose. Both an uneasy population and divide in the country, the last thing people wanted was drones in the sky, and they got exactly